So my last video about Bitcoin not going mainstream anytime soon sparked a lot of debate in the comments. I got a range of perspectives from people insisting Bitcoin is already mainstream, to others saying it's still in its infancy, to then also a few people who think it'll never be more than digital gold. So today I just want to address some of the most interesting points that everybody brought up. So let's start with one of the most common points in the comments. The idea that Bitcoin is already mainstream. Some people made the argument that Bitcoin has already crossed the threshold because it's widely known, has institutional support, and has become a legitimate store of value. For example, Bitcoin Force, thank you for commenting, said that when Wall Street is involved, it's mainstream already. And of course, that's a fair point. There's BlackRock ETFs, there's multi-billion-dollar funds, there's even some states in the US passing laws to hold Bitcoin in their treasuries. The one I can think of right now is New Hampshire. As of May 2025, the iShares Bitcoin Trust, or IBIT, we all bit, has seen 19 consecutive days of inflows totaling over $356 million, which is the longest streak in 2025 so far. Even Goldman Sachs has increased its holdings in IBIT to $1.4 billion in the first quarter of 2025, which is obviously massive. But like I mentioned before, institutional adoption doesn't necessarily mean mainstream adoption. Just because Wall Street is all in doesn't mean your average person is. Let's say that most people do know what Bitcoin is. That doesn't mean they understand it, trust it, or even use it in their daily lives. BSPUS, thank you for commenting, brought this up in a different way, saying it's already mainstream as a store of value, just like gold. And that's true to an extent, obviously. Bitcoin as a digital gold is a powerful and common narrative. It's scarce, it's decentralized, it's seen as a hedge against inflation. But again, that's not the same thing as being a widely used everyday currency. Speaking of digital gold, I got a lot of pushback on the idea that Bitcoin needs to be a daily currency to be mainstream. Some people argued that Bitcoin's real value lies in being a store of value, not a medium of exchange. Moonshine Fuel, thank you for commenting, made a solid point. He said, Bitcoin is too valuable to use every day as currency. It's money that can be traded into a currency. And that's a common perspective among Bitcoiners. Gold isn't used to buy coffee either, but that doesn't make it irrelevant. This also ties into Gresham's Law, which a user called CryptoKid6733, thank you for commenting, mentioned. It's the idea that bad money drives out good money. Or in other words, people are more likely to spend their inflating fiat money and hold on to their appreciating Bitcoin, which is a solid point, and it's one of the reasons Bitcoin might never be a daily currency, even if it becomes globally accepted as a store of value. I also got a lot of comments from people saying we're still early in the Bitcoin game. Playlist Alaska 5611, thank you for commenting, said, time will tell, patience is the game, which is obviously a huge part of the Bitcoin ethos. Bitcoin is only about 15, 16 years old, which is a blip really in the timeline of money as a whole. It took gold centuries to become the backbone of the global financial system. So with that being said, yes, it's fair to say that Bitcoin's journey is just beginning. Infrastructure around Bitcoin is being built up right now. There's a lot of Bitcoin-backed mortgages and loans, and a lot of stores, retailers, big and small, are trying to implement it as a regular form of payment. So we're not there yet. Definitely infrastructure is growing, and that's the important part. A lot of people also brought up the issue of taxes and privacy. Matt Habermel, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, thank you for commenting, said, as long as capital gains is only applied to realized returns, capital gains tax is not a problem, which I completely understand. And for long-term hodlers, capital gains is not a daily concern, but for the average person, it's definitely a huge barrier to using Bitcoin as a currency. A lot of hardcore Bitcoiners, Bitcoin maxis, love the transparency of the blockchain, but most people don't want to jump through hoops just to pay for something without being tracked. So where does that leave us? I think the real question isn't just about the technical side of things or taxes, but instead about psychology. It's about trust and convenience. I said this in my last video. Bitcoin has a long way to go before it's everyday money, but that doesn't mean it's not significant, of course. So yeah, Bitcoin might be mainstream in some ways, but I still think it has a long way to go before it's everyday money. But what do you think? Am I being a little bit too pessimistic, or is this actually the reality of it? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.